Kate Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Helen. It is time for our Saturday book, and I've been trying really hard to mix things up and have different kinds of books, but we keep coming back to the best. And so today we have I thought it was the most recent of Paul Wallis's book, The Invasion of Eden, published in 2024. He has another one out. I cannot keep up, but never fear. I have that book and we will cover it, but I am trying to spread these things out. You don't want to overdose on the best all at one time. So we're going to do the Invasion of Eden, and then we'll give Paul a little rest. He can just calm down because I cannot keep up. And then we'll do his most recent book from 2025. But this is The Invasion of Eden, part 1 in our series, by Paul Wallis. Did our ancestors warn us about ET invasions and its historic repeating itself? Its history repeating itself in the 21st century. I should wear my reading glasses. Okay. Before I start, thank you for watching this. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for commenting. It helps to subscribe and hit that little thumb thing. I really appreciate it. Please consider joining my membership. It's 99 cents, and the purpose is to provide just a small amount of distance between us and the trolls. I can't believe they wouldn't pay 99 cents to give me a hard time. If I wanted to give me a hard time, I'd cough up the 99 cents. Anyway, please consider joining because there is quite a bit of content available there and on my Substack, Ask Your Irish Granny. Now, I take questions. Ask Your Irish Granny started out as an advice column on Substack, and it has morphed as a repository of things that I cannot put on YouTube. So you might consider going there. And in the meantime, if you have missed it, I don't know how you could, check out my conversation with Paul Wallis maybe it's been a month already. Time flies. The older you get, the faster it goes. Pretty soon it's going to be supersonic. Check out my conversation with Paul. Lovely person, delightful conversation. I so enjoyed it. He promised he'd come back after we do his newest book. So I have to hurry up and get that done. So let's start with the penultimate book, The Invasion of Eden by Paul Wallis, 2024. And it begins with a combo introduction and chapter 1 called Bitten. That's a hint. And he is on an airplane. This takes place in international airspace in 2023. He said that he's witnessed this year-long struggle about what to release to the public and to Congress, struggle on the part of people in the know. And that's really the, I suppose, needs to be mentioned fact here is that people in high places, who shall remain nameless, they know about these particular topics. What are we talking about? Contact from other civilizations off planet, off Earth, with the people of Earth. This contact has been ongoing from the beginning. And there's ample archaeological evidence to support that theory, put it that way. Pentagon came out a couple of years ago and said, well, yeah, here's some radar shots and here's some testimony from the USS Nimitz off the coast of San Diego. And here are a couple of our Top Gun fighter pilots who look very uncomfortable, but they're going to tell you about what they saw. And okay, we saw these objects and we didn't know what they were. And by definition, That's a UFO, or as they call it, a UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena. But they weren't just aerial. They also went into the ocean. So yes, they exist. Yes, we have this evidence of them. Yes, we have eyewitness testimony, people that have been vetted for their sanity because they're flying $1 million weapons in the sky. No, these things do not come from human creation on Earth. We don't know where they come from, but they're not human technology because they defy Newtonian physics. So here we go. The Pentagon is concerned. They fear public unpredictability. War of the Worlds. Think of Orson Welles' radio program, War of the Worlds. There's other stuff, though. But military intelligence has recently released ET contact information, the most it has ever released in 70 years. This news, it alarmed a couple of people in Congress, and they got on the warpath because they saw it as an essential threat, and they believe everyone should know. And the Pentagon says they have non-human technology in their possession. The Pentagon admitted it has UFOs. The Pentagon also admitted it has, they didn't call it alien bodies. I think they called it biological entities. And Congress needs to know about it for a variety of reasons. They're challenging the legality of the Pentagon secrecy. And they want accountability because of the tax money that's used in this program. It's just called the program, and it's a black budget program. In other words, taxpayer money goes to the Pentagon, and it gets parceled out to different programs and for different things. And there are some that simply disappear into a black hole, some tax monies that are not held to account every year. And legally, Congress is supposed to get a full accounting. So begs the question, who or what are we in contact with? Who made these things the Pentagon admits it has? Who are these beings that they admit they have? And then the next question is, there's rumor of programs in which the military subcontracts to independent contractors, aerospace contractors, to reverse engineer what they found. So here we are, one page into my notes, and already, in the words of Congressman Tim Burchett, quote, "We've done with the cover-ups and we're going to get to the bottom of it." And then he swore. All of this came to a head because of a whistleblower named David Grusch, G-R-U-S-C-H. If you haven't seen his testimony, go on YouTube and watch it. It's all out there. It was public. It was, for the most part, to my knowledge, it was on television. Unbelievable testimony. He was high up in the military intelligence. Oddly, his earth-shattering information went unremarked. That's the part that blows my mind. This is not what Paul Wallis said. This is me editorializing. I cannot believe this is not in the headlines every single day. It just blows my mind that for, I don't know, I'm going to throw out a number, 70 years, we've had science fiction movies and science fiction books and television shows. The Day the Earth Stood Still. We've had an endless stream of speculation and fictionalization. And we've had autobiographical testimony of people who claim having had contact. We finally get the Pentagon and a military intelligence individual to risk his neck to come out and talk about this. Wah, wah. Just unbelievable. So this David Grusch, he's an historic figure. He will be remembered in history for this. July 26, 2023, the Congressional House Oversight Committee televised hearings without precedent. It's the first time in 3/4 of a century that Congress has shown any verified concern about ETs. And I'm using ET to mean non-human intelligence of whatever, from wherever. And I'm using UFO if you don't know what it is and you don't know who made it and you don't know where it came from and it's an object. The government calls them UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. That's not completely accurate because, as I said, they also go in and out of the oceans. So, and they go in and out of apparently dimensions because they appear and reappear. Who knows? We can't say. But I think unidentified flying objects is probably more accurate than UAP because they do fly into and out of the water and go up into the sky. So I think it might be a little more accurate, but you know, they're always trying to freshening things up, trying to separate themselves from the history. I'm editorializing Paul's book. I'm sorry. So this is the official public UFO acknowledgement of the government. This happened. This is real. It's all out there. You can find it on the internet. So Paul is talking about this, but he's on a plane in the middle seat and he can't get up. He's always got these things going on with his legs. His broken leg is what led him down this path of this brilliant writing and research. And now he's stuck in this middle seat of an airplane and he can't get up. Why? Because his right foot is swollen up like a water balloon. I would be worried about that if I were in an airplane. My legs swelled up. My first thought, well, you can imagine what my first thought would be. Anyway, the flight attendant gave him anti-inflammatories. Okay. And his seatmate was a physiotherapist, and he explained that injuries can flare up in a pressurized cabin. So perhaps this is related, you know, to your broken leg, I think is the implication. It's healed, but, you know. When they land, they offered him a wheelchair, and he was meeting his parents, and so he said no, and he just used the luggage trolley as a walker. But his mother, of course, noticed right away. And then he says, this is to be continued. 39 years ago, he said he became a minister, and 33 years ago, he was ordained in the Church of England. Anglican. He worked in the Anglican church in Australia. This is the equivalent of Episcopalian. He was an archdeacon. I think, you know, if I remember correctly, the word Episcopal actually comes from the word that means a chair, the seat of the bishop, like literally, like a throne, literally. I think, if I remember right. I could be wrong about that. Don't blame Paul. Anyway, he was an archdeacon, which is called a church doctor, so like a PhD type doctor. And he was a theologian and an educator. He taught seminarians, amongst many other things that he did. A church doctor does administrative stuff and deals with paranormal activity in local churches. That might be kind of a fun job. As an educator, he designed and taught education for pastors. So he was the one who trained the ministers who went out and had churches. He said this in the history of Christian thought and hermeneutics, which is interpreting ancient texts. This study led him to study non-human aspects in ancient texts. It's out there, all over, hard to miss. And he discovered a body of cultural memory of ET contact in the deep past. And he said, therefore, as an archdeacon, a linguist, a theologian, a studier of scripture, it was impossible to avoid ufology. The idea of an ET invasion is comical to most people. I've talked about this publicly and I've had comments about how I'm nuts. That's okay. It remains to be seen, doesn't it? Because of popular culture supporting the fantasy and the entertainment and the unreality of it. But in ancient texts, the idea of invasion is at the forefront of the narratives globally. It's really quite remarkable how similar the core origin story is. And it's a thread woven through all cultures and especially throughout the Bible. It's very hard in our culture to distance ourselves from the Bible. And this is what you have to do to have a broader perspective. You don't have to deny your religious beliefs. That's not what he's advocating. This guy's an archdeacon, was an archdeacon in the church. He's not saying that. He's saying, let's look at this through a different lens and take a broader perspective. So this book will explore the archaeology and textual evidence that's supporting his argument. And she said, so the first question, which begs to be asked, I would say, given the non-reaction of the public to the Pentagon announcement, is why should we care today? And his response is that governments have known about human ET interaction for at least 80 years, and that's being really, really generous about the length of time. It's much longer. David Grush told Congress after establishing his own background, which is extensive and full of, full of expertise, that he was concerned to learn about the government secrecy without congressional oversight about UFOs. This was a very big concern because this leaves government officials and Pentagon officials vulnerable over time to accusations of treason and misappropriation of funds, lack of accountability to Congress. It's in the Constitution. Grosh cited photos, documents, and testimony of longtime experts, people with a history of expertise. And they corroborated this evidence, and he went and he corroborated as military intelligence for 4 years. He was on a government UFO task force. That tells you everything you need to know. And he's asking Congress to investigate. Is why he became public. How did Paul Wallis get involved? So he's the paleocontact guy because, if you don't know the full story, his books build on each other and they're very good that way. They reinforce what has come before in the past books and build on new information, and it reinforces your understanding and it broadens the information. And I would strongly advise, shameless plug here, I would advise buy the books. They're great books, very good reads. They're not difficult reads. They read quickly and you get completely absorbed. Very entertaining. Unfolds like a movie almost. It's quite conversational, so they're very accessible. Put that aside. Money is an issue. I totally understand. So if that's beyond your ability to afford, that's why I do these videos synopsizing books to encourage people to buy the books. I don't tell you everything that's in the book, and there's a reason for that. Go read the books. But if you can't and you can't afford audiobooks, I don't know if he does Audible type audiobooks. This is the next best choice. Go look at my videos where I synopsize the books, because we talk quite a bit about the information in the books, the narrative flow of the book, and I editorialize a bit, but fascinating information, easy to digest, compelling story. I highly recommend them. And then check out The Fifth Kind. It's on YouTube. I think it's on Gaia, but you know, I can't afford any more streaming services, which is a bummer. I'd love to get Gaia, but he's up there with Linda Moulton Howe, you know. Anyway, Grosh asked Congress to investigate, and how did Paul Wallis get involved? You know, now he's the paleocontact guy. That means ancient contact from other worlds, and this book is all about that. So his first book, The Escaping from Eden, was called by George Norrie This Generation's Chariot of the Gods, which that is high praise, high praise. I loved Chariot of the Gods when I read it as a young student, and it's the first of a long series of books that must be read. Eric von Daniken, and Paul knows Eric. How exciting is that? Anyway, I recommend The Fifth Kind TV, the Paul Wallis TV also, and just to show, when Paul Wallis was called the new Eric von Daniken, just to show he doesn't take offense, Eric von Daniken has personally endorsed Paul's work, saying, quote, "Paul Wallis is one of my best colleagues. I have full respect for him." Love it. Anyway, it's very hard to overcome the reservations that somebody in military intelligence would have. The NDAs, the contracts, the clearances, hard to go over that. To go public, you really have to put your ego aside because you will be ridiculed. The praise to get was validation, but for Paul, it was validation. But then, of course, he felt this obligation to get this information out. David Fravor, who commanded the Nimitz squad in 2004, Grosh, and Ryan Graves, the director of Americans for Safe Aerospace, those two guys, Fravor and Graves, they were both Navy pilots. Navy pilots go through intensive psychological evaluations. They have to be the most stable of the stable, not given to flights of fancy. Grosh was a pilot and the head investigator for the Pentagon's UAP task force to collect information about the program, the reverse engineering. This is the intelligence communications name for everyone and every organization that's involved in UFO retrieval and reverse engineering. They've done more than 70 years of top secret work. That's a mind blower. So in 2019, well, let's go back 2017. All of this was leaked by Chris Mellon, who was the Assistant Secretary of Defense. Okay. Now, I have to put out there, because I've heard back from people, this is all a government op. This is all a lead up to the government claiming UFOs and using it as a manipulation. That's a conspiracy theory. I guess it's a topic that could be debated, but I'll say this: this is my opinion. This is not from the book. My opinion is you don't stick your head out and put your neck on the line. Mix my metaphors. You don't take these kind of professional and personal risks without serious motivation. Serious motivation. Chris Mellon is wealthy. You know, the Mellon family, Mellon. They have beaucoup bucks. You know, Assistant Secretary of Defense. It's meritocracy. But these are people who are kind of insulated from the negative impact. Like, they're not going to get fired from their job, and if they do, it's not going to have an impact on their quality of life. He went to the New York Times in 2017 and leaked this to try to jumpstart public disclosure. And 2 years later, in 2019, the Pentagon at last admitted it. The Pentagon admitted it. Okay, is this a 5-dimensional chess on the part of the government. It's hard to imagine they'd be capable of playing checkers, so we'll see. Since then, Luis Elizondo, whose book we did, provided information and was validated by Alain Juillet, the former chief French national security guy. And since then, a number of eminent scientists have spoken publicly about what their study of this material found. So, okay, now we're spreading the story across not only American intelligence and American military, Pentagon, excuse me. Now it's spread to other countries talking about it, and it's spread to scientists and aerospace professionals in private industry. It's one hell of a conspiracy. I'm not making accusations, YouTube. I'm just chatting. And they have come out and said they'd studied the materials that were found, and this is what the engineers who've studied them have officially publicly said. These are exotic materials from off-world vehicles not made on Earth. Boom. Very interesting. So this led to 2021 Senate briefings and then 2022 congressional hearings. And that's where I go, wah, wah. There just hasn't been the sort of reaction that I would have thought. I thought people's hair would be on fire. So Grosh is given the job of investigating the program, but then he was refused access, even though he had top clearance. He got permission from the Pentagon to speak publicly. And I don't know what I'm going to read next. It's been a while since I read this book, and I retain nothing anymore because, old age. But my short-term memory, it's become a pathetic thing. But in the margin here, I wrote, wow, wow, wow. So brace yourself. He's bound by non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, and he can't name names publicly, but he has privately. And he's spoken to journalists, and this is what he said. The Pentagon has studied non-human pilots, non-human technology with key intelligence authority blessing. Wow, wow, wow. So he's spoken with people who have direct knowledge of the program, and 40 have corroborated under oath. And this is what is said about that. I'll be taking bits and pieces here from the next couple of pages, not the whole thing, don't worry. But their sworn testimony provided the present location of these retrieved craft, like where the UFOs are being kept, the names of people who have run the program, the names of the Pentagon officials responsible for blocking its disclosure, the details of what was recovered, when, and from where. Okay, take a breath. That's 40 officials have corroborated this. The Inspector General of Intelligence Communications sent a letter to the Senate and the House Intelligence Committees and determined that denying Grosh access was urgent and credible, and led to public testimony of Grosh and Favors. So they put a wall up, and then there were these testimonies in front of the Intelligence Committee. And Grosh and Faber, and I remember them sitting there. I remember thinking how brave they were. You can just watch the video. None of this is a secret. And they discussed engagement with non-human UAPs. They talked about interacting with UFOs. And then they said things about non-human pilots, and there's sort of a question and answer format, and I wrote, yikes. So let's see. So, for example, talking about non-human pilots and technology, Grosh replied, and this is in testimony, this is in the record, the congressional record. I can't discuss that publicly. I can only answer that in a closed session. I can give you an answer, but it will need to be in a SCIF. That's a sensitive compartmented information facility. That's where they need to put aside all of their devices. They're not allowed to bring anything in there with them, including pen and paper. And it's very carefully monitored so that there is 100% secrecy about what they talk about. So there's something going on. Mr. Graves, I would like to ask, how do you know that these were not our aircraft? This is a question from Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee. And Graves replies, and this is a quote, some of the behaviors that we saw, we would see these objects at 0 Mach. So this is a speed. These objects were staying completely stationary in Category 4 hurricane winds. These objects would then accelerate to supersonic speeds, and they would do so in very erratic and quick behaviors that we don't have an explanation for. What he's saying is they defy the laws of physics. Congressman Burchett now turns his attention to Commander Fravor. Mr. Fravor, what astonished you the most about the flight capabilities of these Tic Tacs? I believe they're talking about these UFOs that look like gigantic Tic Tacs that they saw off the coast of San Diego while on the USS Nimitz, viewed by a variety of Navy brass. Again, there was no hesitation. What astonished you? Their performance, absolute performance. And then he's asked, you're not aware of any other objects that anybody in the world has, in this world, that has these capabilities? And Fravor says, no, actually, I think it's far beyond the material science that we possess. Then is it possible these UAPs may be probing our capabilities? That was an interesting question. And the answer was yes, yes, yes. Is it possible? Now, they're talking to 3 different people here, so each one said yes. Is it possible these UAPs might be testing for vulnerabilities in our current systems? Yes, yes, it's possible. Do you feel, based off your experience and information that you've been privy to, that these UAPs provide an existential threat to the national security of the United States? So this is an interesting response. Potentially, definitely, potentially. So in the event that your encounters had become hostile, would you have had the capability to defend yourself, your crew, or your aircraft? Absolutely not. That raises a few questions and a few hairs on the back of your neck. So therefore, the conclusion that Paul is pointing to is that these are a military threat. But this is what the Pentagon has decided. This is what Congress has decided. This is a big old threat. But there has been no incidents of aggression that we're aware of. I mean, where are the laser guns? You know, we have not seen any kind of aggression. It's a potential. They use the word potential because that would be the truth. They possess technology that we don't even understand. But is it hostile? That's the question. And is this discussed by our ancestors in ancient sources? Was there an invasion of ETs? So this book explores that question, and it explores it across space and time. So chapter 2, what's in a name? The Bosporus Strait, where the Marmara and Black Seas meet. This is Turkey, Istanbul, where Europe and Asia. So he was on a ship as a guest of a guy called first initial, Potamianos, the owner of a fleet, a Greek shipping oligarch, I get the impression. They were sailing to Istanbul, which straddles Europe and Asia, and they came to look at ancient testimony to distant ancestors. He gets to go to all these cool places. It's really interesting. They're 600 miles now east of Istanbul. and there are megalithic remains found that are part of larger discoveries since 1960s. And they come from the Urartu culture, Urartu. I don't remember learning anything about this in school, but if they were discovered in the 60s, that shouldn't be too surprising. They come from the first millennium BCE, before the Christian era, so as much as 1,000 years before Christ. And they was a later offshoot of Sumer, the Sumerians. In 2017, divers on the bed of Lake Vau, next to the dig at Adisevas, and I apologize for my absolute mangling of these names. Get the book and you can see what their real spelling and pronunciation are. They found submerged megaliths, these divers on this lake bed, 100 feet. 100 feet, that's big, and sophisticated. So the question is, why do these older finds have more sophistication and technical ability than the more recent archaeological layers? So what is he saying? What is this implying? You know, archaeologists go out and they dig. Somebody finds a pot shard or something, and so they go out and they dig, and they find stuff. And they find evidence of some sort of cultural community, a civilization of some sort, but it's not very sophisticated. Maybe, and I'm just speculating, you know, maybe they don't have writing, maybe they are rudimentary buildings, maybe, you know, handmade clay, bricks, whatever. No indication of really advanced organization, social organization, or technology. Getting hiccups. Technology. So they dig a little farther. They go into the lake. They go to the bottom of the lake, and they find evidence of a much more sophisticated culture. Okay, what's that all about? That's the question. There's a dating disparity. Urartu was about 3,000 years ago, and the megaliths date from before 6,500 years ago. So what happened between those two? What happened between the really technologically sophisticated stuff in the lake bed and the more recent stuff closer to the surface on the land? How did one devolve from the other is what they're saying. So studied in 1984, it showed a window of construction of megalithic structures that go back from 6,500 BCE to, they go back farther to 9,500 BCE, closer to the most recent ice age. So this predates our existing Sumerian timeline by thousands of years, and it approaches a date common to the stories globally of our origin, of the relaunch of the human population, the most recent relaunch of the human population. In other words, you know, the flood stories and how most of the world was wiped out, the Noah and the Ark type stories that are ubiquitous globally. Is Urartu much older than they thought, and is it preceded by ancient sophisticated civilizations that somehow disappeared? I think the hint is they're underwater. So how old is civilization in this area? So there's a place called the Karaka Dag site, D-A-G, Dag site, found in 1998 in southeast Turkey, a place called Anatolia, and they discovered the first known farm. I don't know how they determined that, but I don't remember if it's in the book, if it explains how they determined it. But this was a big leap in agriculture, a big leap to agriculture. And it showed genetic manipulation of plants, and then the sudden appearance of animal husbandry. So humanity went from wandering around, subsistence, living off what they could find in small nomadic groups, to all of a sudden they're breeding animals and growing crops that they've manipulated to get the best crop. So this is dated 10,000 years ago. And there was a moment of human crisis. So what the stories say, this is now what the stories say, that we needed some kind of intervention. There was a tiny population emerging from the ice age that we were almost extinct, humanity was. And with these developments, animal husbandry, genetic engineering of crops, humans could survive and create surpluses and therefore have time to specialize in artistry and technology, and it evolves the sophistication of cultures and society. Oh, science, art, and technology. I guess I retain more than I realize. So this is at the Fertile Crescent, you know, the Tigris and Euphrates and Fertile Crescent. 10,000 years ago, this was the birth of civilization. These were the cities of Mesopotamia, the land between the rivers. But this other site throws completely different light on this narrative. So go back 2 hours from the farm that they found at Karajadog, and you get Gobekli Tepe. I swear they invented these words just to tie my tongue up. Gobekli Tepe. And if you remember, Gobekli Tepe was this deserted compound of structures that were incredibly technologically sophisticated in their construction and probably not residential, but they didn't know what they were for. They still don't know. I've got that book I showed you guys. I should drag it out again. And now he makes a big comment. I found this really interesting, and it's backed up by a lot of other people. Maybe what they found here explains the political angst about the security of Iran, Iraq, and Syria, Mesopotamia. Gobekli Tepe is extensive, and it puts to question the first farm. Gobekli is 50 times larger than Stonehenge. Stonehenge is pretty small. And it was active before 10,000 years ago, so that challenges dating. And at 10,000 years ago, it was carefully buried. The whole place, Gobekli Tepe, buried. It's not residential. They don't believe it's religious. They didn't find iconography. Was it a museum? I don't know what it was. It has markings, glyphs, and symbols of some sort of technological nature, but it implies a very settled and advanced culture. They just don't really know how to interpret it. It existed before the end of the Ice Age, which was somewhere between 12,800 and 11,600 years ago, a long time ago. And the farm, the Dag farm, is a reboot of civilization after the Ice Age. This is what they're saying. Is Gobekli Tepe the memorial? I couldn't read my writing. Is it the memorial to an advanced civilization that tutored Karajadog, the farm? So do you see what they're implying here? There was an advanced civilization that helped people get back on their feet at the end of the last Ice Age. Then there is Adil Sevaz, which is 6 hours to the east, and this brings us into the realm of paleocontact. And he talks about a stone basalt block that is flawless, and it has these reliefs, like these I don't know the right word, the art word, but chiseled into the actual rock itself is this artwork. But how? Because this is basalt, and this is way before iron and steel were invented. The tools they had were not really up to it. Today, we use diamond tipped saws and tungsten carbide. How did Stone Age people with bronze tools create this sculpting? He sees familiar symbology on this box from similar to Sumer, Babylonia, and Assyrian artwork. And he says that there are portrayals there of advanced beings. They're obviously superior to the humans that they're interacting with in the artwork. Are these the ancient non-human visitors introducing civilization? Now, the stories are about gods. So let's talk about that. They talk in Sumerian mythology about Enlil, Enki, Gilgamesh. And on this basalt, there's the figure of a guy called Haldi, Haldi, who's parallel to Gilgamesh, similar. And he's holding a lion. And this is very interesting, this iconography. Haldi stands on the lion. This is a message to people who see this artwork that he has the power and the right to rule. This lion is a symbol of divine rule, divine right. And the lion is still a symbol, persists for royalty today. Look at all the English stuff. Also appears in Russian symbology. Cuneiform writings of Sumeria and Babylon claim that Gilgamesh was given the right to rule. He held the lion. He is a hybrid in the stories. He's a human with alien DNA from the sky people. So, you know, gods, beings from the sky, gods, aliens, potato is what the implication is. Asherah, if you remember Asherah from the last book, this is the feminine figure of the stars. This is the female power who nurtured and tutored the ancestors in agronomy and civilization building, and also is associated with the lion, the symbol of power. And later, all evidence was removed. Haldi is a part of a benevolent visitation bringing gifts of civilization. Haldi wears a coat and has huge wings. His left hand, he has a bowl. They don't know, is it a bowl? Is it a handbag? And this symbol repeats globally. And so the question being asked today is, have we interpreted this wrong? Is that his coach bag? Is that purse? Or is this some sort of ubiquitous science, technology, media, communication device? What's he carting around? And in his right hand is a pine cone. And the pine cone is an ancient symbol of wisdom because our pineal gland looks that shape. This pine cone symbol represents the activation of the pineal gland, which leads to the higher orders of understanding and ways of being, enlightenment, wisdom. This echoes the story of Enki from the Sumerians, who he genetically engineered the first humans and nurtured us and fine-tuned our cognitive power. So is Haldi related to these beings? The story is the same. A lot of the visuals are the same in the artwork. He's often shown with eagles in the sky above, and eagles in the sky are related to the power of government, as lions are the power to rule being handed to them. he's a representative of the authorities from the sky. So this is the same as the Oannes story of Babylon, who lives on Earth as an emissary of the sky beings from outer space. Haldi, on the ground, communicates with feathered beings in the sky using ziggurats. Ziggurats are those weird four-sided stepped pyramids that exist in the Middle East and Mesoamerica, South America, and are seen in reliefs in Mesopotamia. Kef Khaleesi, this is these words, I'm sorry, is a place with a black basalt box that we've talked about. And this is where Paul meets up with his friend Matthew LaCroix. And it was found on the banks of Lake Van, V-A-N. And why is there so little chatter about it? Matt wrote with Billy Carson a book called The Epic of Humanity, and you can see them on Fifth Kind TV, the Paul Wallis channel. It's on YouTube, and they're really, really, really interesting. Matt is passionate about the finds in Anatolia. I want to say, I hope I'm not misspeaking, I shouldn't speculate, but I think this is like the area of Armenia. I think. Be wrong. He believes that attention is low because the box has been misdated. So there's reliefs on the box. So this is artwork chiseled into it, engraved into it. They depict space travel, advanced technology, advanced knowledge, cognitive upgrades, seed banks from the sky, and on the ground, 3 trees. And this particular depiction is very similar to the Tree of Life mural at Ashgaban. There's the library there in Iraq, where the Epic of Gilgamesh was uncovered. If associated these artifacts with these artifacts, that wouldn't be remarkable. I mean, it stands to reason. However, if associated with finds on the Lake Van bed, the lake bed, there's a missing link in the history of human civilization, as we talked about. These are far earlier dates. They're saying, okay, these have been misdated. They're a lot older than we ever thought. That pushing back farther into the past, the history of human activity in this area. Oh, it is Armenia. Armenian is one of the world's oldest languages, dating to the 9th millennium BC, and it has a lot of ancient information in its vocabulary from the earliest human habitations and civilizations. Now, Paul is a linguist, and he goes quite extensively often into these little side conversations about word origins and relationships across languages. And it's very dense in information, difficult to synopsize. I recommend you read the book, but I try as much as I can to synopsize here, and I'm sure there's much more nuance to it, but I'll do my best. So Haldi, H-A-L-D-I, the guy with the bowl bag communication device something. So this name gives us reason to believe that ancient carvings on the box tell of an ET component contact. Haldi is this area's great patriarch, their god. Paul describes how the name Haldi is derived from the Chaldeans, the people of Ur, the high place, Ur, not where Abraham comes from, right? Oh, from which Abraham comes. There's a phonetic relationship between these words because Abraham came from Ur with the ancient Sumerian stories that he brought with him. It was believed that he began his journey in Mesopotamia in modern Iraq. But there are no high place of the Chaldees that's ever been found in that area of Mesopotamia. Suggestions of places have been made, but not challenged over the last 100 or so years. The timeline of Chaldee does not equal the timeline of Abraham's life. So where did Abraham come from? So trying to look at these stories as historical, factual stories and put them in a real historical context, a chronology, there are inconsistencies. In the correct time frame for him, we find that the Haldor of Armenia, called the Chaldea. Okay, this is not Chaldee the guy. This is the people from a place in Armenia. These people were called the Chaldea. Did Abraham come from Anatolia in ancient Armenia? Paul thinks so, and this agrees with Genesis, which describes Abraham coming from the direction of this place, and that is on the way from Lake Man. So this distance makes sense too. So if you move where you assume Abraham originated, suddenly all of these stories fall into place. Abraham's grandson Jacob called him a wanderer from Aram, which is that area, Armenia. I am going to stop here. I have another obligation in a few minutes, and we're at the end of the chapter, so that makes it perfect. So we finished chapter 2, and this is the end of video number 1, and we will begin chapter 3, video number 2. You're going to get a full dose of book this next few weekends, because this is a pretty good, dense book. I am, by the way, you probably will have had the opportunity to see, I'm recording earlier in the week, fitting it in, and I have yet to record my book drawing for Mallory McMurrow's book. And I did really sincerely mean that I'm going to do it, and I am going to do it. I've just been trying to find the time to fit it in. And I will do that this week. And so probably you will already have that information before you have listened to this video. So I don't know why I'm even talking about it. I'll be back. Slánga foil, slánta.